Welcome to today's lesson on the purpose of government. We're going to look at what makes a government legitimate, why citizens have rights, and when people can justifiably demand a change in their government. These ideas come straight from the Declaration of Independence and the experiences of the American colonists as they built a new nation.
Let's start with the basics. The Declaration of Independence lays out why governments are created in the first place, where they get their power, and what people should do if their government becomes corrupt or abusive. We'll see that these ideas weren't just for 1776, they're principles that shape our country today.
According to the Declaration, governments exist to secure people's rights, nothing more, nothing less. They get all of their power from the consent of the governed. When a government fails in its purpose or starts to abuse its citizens, the people who live under it not only have the right, but even the duty, to change or abolish it and build something better.
The founders believed that government exists solely to protect natural rights like life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Governments are not supposed to hand out rights or guarantee happiness to anyone. People already have their rights simply by being human. The government's job is to safeguard those rights for everyone, and that's it.
A government only has rightful power because the people agree to let it lead. That's called the consent of the governed. If government actions happen without this consent, they're not truly legitimate. People are the ultimate source of authority, and government serves the people, not the other way around. This was a brand new idea compared to old systems where kings claimed to rule by birthright.
If a government becomes destructive, meaning it takes away rights or rules in a tyrannical way, the people have every right to change it. In fact, the Declaration says they even have an obligation to set things right by creating a government that truly protects their rights and reflects their consent.
We need to keep in mind that governments are limited on purpose. Their job is not to micromanage our lives, but to protect the freedoms we already possess. If government sticks to its limits and guards everyone's rights, society thrives and liberty is safe for everyone.
Whenever you think of government's main job, remember, it's about protecting your life, your freedom to act, and your ability to pursue happiness. By doing this, government lays the groundwork for a peaceful and prosperous society where everyone can thrive. It's important to understand that rights exist before there's any government at all. The founders made it clear. Government's only proper role is to secure those rights, not to decide who gets them or to invent new rights out of thin air. You have your rights because you're human, not because of a law or leader. 9. To avoid abusing power, the government must have clear boundaries. When the rules are set and leaders stick to their specific roles, individual freedoms are best protected. These checks keep the government from overreaching and help everyone's rights stay strong and secure. 9.
Power comes from the people, not from tradition or force. In America, citizens participate in government by electing leaders, voting on laws, and holding officials accountable. This is self-government in action, ordinary people governing themselves through their choices. 9.
At every level, the government is meant to serve the public and take direction from citizens. When people vote, speak up, or run for office, they are exercising the sovereignty that truly belongs to them, not to the rulers. 9.
Because it isn't practical for millions of people to make every law themselves, Americans use a representative democracy. That means we elect people to act and vote on our behalf, but those officials work for the people, answer to them, and can be replaced if they ignore their responsibilities. 9.
Laws must have the support of the people to be legitimate. No matter how complex or distant a new law might seem, it is supposed to come from the consent of regular citizens. And even with government in place, each person still keeps basic rights that should never be violated. 9.
One of the Declaration's most important teachings is that people only give government enough power to protect their rights. In the old days, people gave up almost all their power to whoever ruled them, but America turned that upside down by letting citizens set strict limits. 9.
Throughout most of history, people accepted losing their freedoms to kings or lords as the price for safety and social order. Unfortunately, this left regular people with little power and a lot of unfairness. America's founders wanted to fix that by limiting what the government could do.
Our founders said that all rights belong to the people, not to politicians or rulers. The people decide which powers a government will get, and everything else stays with the citizens. It's a significant reversal from history and totally changes how government works.
Citizens are meant to be the real bosses. We have the authority to control and limit government, and we can make changes peacefully through elections, advocacy, and civic involvement. That makes us not just subjects, but active shapers of our nation.
If a government stops protecting rights or actually starts harming people, it no longer has legitimacy. Its only purpose is to serve and protect its citizens. If it crosses the line into oppression or injustice, people have to step in.
If a government breaks its agreement with the people by ignoring their wishes or violating their fundamental rights, then citizens have every justification to change, reform, or even abolish it and make something better.
If the government fails, people have the right and responsibility to build a new one that does a better job of keeping folks safe, happy, and free. That need for renewal and reform is built right into American thinking.
Now, just because people have the right to revolution doesn't mean it should happen all the time. The founders said that major changes should be rare and carefully considered. A peaceful, stable system is almost always better than constant upheaval.
It's wise to remember that not every problem calls for drastic action. Overthrowing a government only makes sense for very serious problems, not minor grievances. Using patience and careful judgment keeps society steady and fair.
Changing the government is a huge step that affects everyone, so every effort should be made to fix problems peacefully first. Only when all peaceful solutions have failed should people turn to more drastic options.
A revolution is only justified if the government repeatedly violates people's rights and refuses to listen or fix things. If abuse continues and there's no way to get justice, then, and only then, revolution can be the right answer. Let's connect this to history. The American colonists didn't just wake up and decide to rebel. For years, they endured increasing violations by the British government: taxation without consent, unfair new laws, trade restrictions, loss of local governments, and even being forced to house enemy soldiers. Between 1763 and 1776, the British government imposed taxes that the Americans never approved, made them feed and house British troops against their will, and even tried to incite unrest. The colonists saw these actions as a pattern of systematic tyranny, not isolated events. The Declaration set out 27 grievances against King George III. This list proved that the British government wasn't just making mistakes, it was following a long train of abuses, violating rights in all areas of colonial life. This laid the legal foundation for American independence. Before declaring independence, the colonists tried every other way to resolve their problems. They sent petitions to England, tried peaceful protests like the Olive Branch Petition and non-importation agreements, and only declared independence when those efforts failed completely.
Let's talk about 3 critical stages in the colonists' journey toward independence. First is the petitions for redress. At first, colonists tried to work within the system. They wrote formal petitions to the British authorities, outlining their complaints and requesting solutions. These petitions were a peaceful way to express their grievances and hope for a fair response from those in charge. When those petitions were ignored or rejected, colonists moved to active resistance. This meant organizing protests, refusing to comply with unfair laws, and sometimes even defying or breaking those laws as a community. Their acts of resistance ranged from boycotting British goods to staging events like the Boston Tea Party. These actions showed the British government that the colonists were serious about wanting change. Finally, after years of unanswered petitions and escalating resistance, the colonists made the difficult decision to declare independence.
Persistent abuses and violations of their rights convinced them they had no other choice. The Declaration of Independence was their bold step into a new chapter, creating a revolutionary movement that led to the birth of the United States. Let's talk about how the colonists moved from patient endurance to demanding independence. The Declaration of Independence describes how colonists endured hardships and unfair treatment for many years, yet continued to hope for a peaceful resolution. Even in tough times, they showed patience and perseverance, believing that their problems could be solved without violence. Instead of rushing straight into conflict, they tried peaceful methods first. Colonists wrote petitions, such as the Olive Branch Petition, sent them to the king, and organized non-importation agreements to show they wanted reconciliation rather than fighting. These efforts reflected their genuine commitment to peaceful protest. But after exhausting all possible peaceful options and realizing that reconciliation was impossible, the colonists felt they had no choice left. Their patient endurance gave way to determination, and they finally declared independence. Choosing freedom meant they were ready to create a new government that would protect their rights and give them a voice in shaping their future.
This is one of the most essential lines from the Declaration of Independence. With these words, the American colonies boldly announced to the world that they were done being ruled by Britain. The Declaration formally broke all political ties with the British government and made it clear that the colonies were now united as their own country. By making this announcement, the colonies became the United States of America. For the first time, they claimed all the rights and powers of a genuinely independent nation, things like making laws, signing treaties, and defending themselves. The date that this happened, July 4, 1776, is now celebrated as the official birthday of the United States. Signing the Declaration was not just a statement of freedom, it was the birth of a new nation, with its own future in its own hands.
Now it's time for your writing assignment. Your task is to explain why Americans in 1776 believed they had more than just light and temporary reasons, what the Declaration calls light and transient causes, to start a revolution against Britain. In your answer, first describe what light and transient causes means. These are the minor annoyances or temporary problems that don't justify something as big as a revolution. Next, list some of the most substantial evidence the colonists pointed to. Think about things like unfair taxes, loss of rights, and the long list of abuses named in the Declaration of Independence. Then, talk about the pattern from 1763 to 1776. How did repeated actions by the British government show not just random mistakes, but a real pattern of systematic tyranny? Why did this convince Americans that independence was the only solution? Finally, explain why the revolution was justified in this case. Make sure to include real examples from what you've learned in the Declaration and in our lessons. Write at least 2 thoughtful paragraphs showing you understand both the facts and the big ideas behind America's decision to fight for independence.
Today, we've explored why government exists, when people have the right to demand radical change, and how American independence was ultimately justified. Understanding these ideas helps us value and protect democracy today, making us better participants in our own government.